Hello, everyone, and welcome to Acceptable Madness. My name's Scott McKinney, and this is the podcast for depressed people. Today, we're going to be talking about opening up, which is something that, dealing with depression, opening up, and actually finding a way to talk to people about anything really can be very difficult. And I know that might sound weird coming from someone who's has a podcast about depression and, puts a lot of their emotions into writing and puts it on a public platform so that people might find it. But it's not, that didn't happen overnight. There's been a lot of transitioning for me to get to that point, years of it. And there's a reason that I got there, and it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of headache and heartache and all the other kind of aching that can go into literally anything. So it's just, I know that it's something that's a very difficult thing for people to do, myself included. So that's why I wanted to talk about what kind of stuff I had done to kind of open up and start to find a support system and find people that I can talk to and more openly talk about the negative and potentially harmful thoughts that go through my head and how that can make the entire process of dealing with your own brain a little bit easier. So, I mean, the thoughts, we'll just start with those, I guess. But, I mean, the thoughts that go through people's heads when they have depression, I can't read everybody's mind, so I don't know what goes through everybody's heads. But I know for me that they can get very, very morbid, and it's stuff that I really don't have any control over. It can be very negative. It can be very self-harming. It can be harming for other people. It's not stuff that I would ever dream of doing or actually put any sort of malicious intent behind, but it's stuff that just goes through your head in kind of a never-ending bombardment, and you can't stop it. And the best way to have those thoughts and to deal with them and cope with them, as someone that whenever I first started going through depression, which happened for me at about 8th grade, my thought was, I'm just going to keep all of this shit to myself because this is sadistic. And if I tell any of this to anybody, then I will be so heavily scrutinized, or they'll think that I'm mentally unstable, or they'll think that I'm going to do something to hurt myself, which, granted, there is a chance of that. I mean, I'm not saying that I was going to do it, but it's a thought that goes through your head, and, depression's, it's a little finicky. It can be fickle at times. So, but, you don't want to just tell people that, and you don't want them to immediately feel pity for you or to think about you differently, because you're no different. You just have kind of opened up about the thoughts that go through your head. And it's very interesting. So for me, whenever I started having these thoughts, I kept them very bottled up, except for the occasional, practically a tantrum and kind of like just, a lot of random crying and outbursts and stuff like that, because I didn't know how to process my emotions, but I also wasn't comfortable asking for help in processing them. It was something that's very hard to think about, and it's hard to bring up to other people. Like, it's already hard enough that you have these thoughts going through your head, but then the thought that you're going to go and tell a close friend, a significant other, a family member, a complete stranger that happens to have the title therapist or doctor, it's terrifying. Like, opening up and telling these people about these thoughts that you have is just, it's absolutely terrifying. It's horrifying. And there's, the amount of anxiety and panic that goes into even considering telling someone is outlandish. And it's just because, for me personally, it was because I didn't want to be viewed any differently, because I didn't feel any different. I'm still just a person. I'm a human. I'm just like everybody else. But I have these thoughts, and then that starts to weigh on me, and it starts to have effects. Whenever I was actually younger, I would, I don't want to talk about any type of religious affiliation or anything about that, but so whenever I was younger, I had a pretty, and I still do have a pretty outrageous imagination, but something that I would think is whenever these thoughts would start to happen, they did happen whenever I was younger, but they really hit around 8th grade. But I would have these thoughts, like cartoonish thoughts, where like on one shoulder there'd be the devil and the other shoulder there was like an angel, and they're constantly telling me which way to go. And I would just have these like really vivid images in my head of what was happening. And it was because I had no possible way of explaining these negative thoughts. So to me, it was like, well, there has to be some other reason for it. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's because there's this weird, otherworldly power trying to control me. But it can't be me. There's no way that it could be me, right? It can't be me. There's no way. Because I'm fine. I'm normal. And as I grew up and I started to realize that I am normal and I am fine and I am all these things, but I'm also very depressed and I definitely have suicidal thoughts, but that doesn't take away from who I am. And it's taken years to kind of come to terms with that and tell people. Through the process of making this podcast and trying to just get out there a little bit more, put my work out there, I created a Facebook page for the blog and podcast, also called Acceptable Madness. And I invited all of my Facebook friends to like it. And I had my aunt actually call my mom and, express some concern, like, is your son okay? Is he actually, is he fine? Like, is he with you? She was asking all these questions, and I really can't fault her for it at all. I mean, I post some kind of dark stuff from time to time. I mean, that's the whole point. My writing is pretty dark and depressing because that's the outlet that I use to kind of control it. But it hasn't always been easy to try to get it out there. And I still have people that are concerned for my safety, and they don't need to be, but the concern, although it feels like it should feel like something positive, at least for me. Like, it feels like, great, someone's thinking about you, someone cares about your well-being and all that stuff. But for me, instead, it feels like, why are you pitying me or giving me this attention, or, why are you using that kind of brain power to think about me? I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't want you to worry about me. I want to go on with my normal life. And if I decide to post something about someone killing themselves, great. I don't want people to start overanalyzing it. Now, I know at the same time that suicidal thoughts and depression is something that, again, I even said it earlier in this podcast, it's very finicky. So you need to approach it with the right kind of care, and the way that people do it is by asking and trying to check in. But sometimes, for me, that's not what I want. What I want is to, not have people worry about me in that way. Not have people check in, feel like I need the help or something like that. And it's interesting. But basically, all I'm saying is I'm personally still uncomfortable with putting myself out there. But I think it's helping me. It's really been nice to find a support system, reach out, have people read my writing, listen to the podcast, and even if people aren't doing it, knowing that I have the comfort to put all that stuff out there. Now, I am not saying that everyone with depression needs to have a blog or a podcast. What I am saying is that I think it would be helpful to try to find a support system. And the way that you get to that support system is through trying to open up and trying to find ways that'll make you feel more comfortable and potentially happier in the long run. And I mean, the end goal for anybody, depressed or not, the end goal is to just be happy every day. And for people with depression, it's significantly harder. But being able to open up can help. I'm still the kind of guy that if I know that I fucked something up, like I did something bad or I offended or hurt someone, I'm still the kind of guy that has a hard time saying sorry. Now, I don't know why that is, because I think it relentlessly until I'm exhausted mentally, but I have a hard time saying it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not opened up. It means that it means that I'm aware, and that's just guilt. But I always feel like guilt hits me harder than a lot of others. But I think that's just because it's my guilt and it's just sitting there. But I know other people have the same thoughts. So that's the whole reason I'm doing this podcast. But it's very interesting. And I know that opening up is not, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. It took me years upon years to do it. And the only reason that I did it is because I basically had an emotional breakdown. And my friend, who eventually turned into my girlfriend, was just kind of in the right place at the right time. And I was kind of able to just confide in her everything that I was thinking. And she handled it like a champion because there's someone out there that cares. And from there, it became easier. So I was able to tell someone that I was having negative thoughts. And the weekend there was one specific weekend that I opened up a lot. And it was because, and I wrote something about it. And the thought was, I just laid in my bed for like the whole weekend. And it wasn't because I didn't have the motivation to get up. It was because I was so terrified of my brain at that moment and what it was telling me to do and, what it was trying to get me to do to myself, that if I stood up, I was worried that I was going to do something suicidal. Like, I was worried that if I stood up, I was going to kill myself. Like, I was freaking the fuck out. I was crying in my bed. I was home alone, and I don't know if that had anything to trigger it. Because at that point I was living with my parents and they had gone out, and I'm not, nothing negative. I mean, towards them by any means. They're some of my biggest supporters. Sometimes it just hits at weird times and you never really know what triggers it. And if you can figure out what triggers it, good. Use that to your advantage and try not to have it get triggered again. But I was just laying in bed, bawling my eyes out, because I was worried that if I was going to stand up, I was going to find a way to kill myself. So the way around that was to just lay there and wait. I didn't know what I was waiting for. I didn't know if anything was going to change, but I was not going to move. And it's you can hear that and go, well, Scott, if you have these thoughts going through your head that you don't want to do something to yourself, but if you stand up, you do it to yourself, then why can't you just stand up and, I don't know, not do it to yourself? Well, that would be approaching depression and my brain with some reason. And that's stuff that really doesn't mesh with me very well all the time. And I'm sure if you've made it this far in, it doesn't mesh with you all the time either. And that's okay. But the reason that opening up helped me was I just told someone that I was having these thoughts. I told someone that if I stood up, I was worried I was going to kill myself. And I don't really remember the conversation that was had after that. But I remember not feeling as scared to stand up a few hours later. And maybe it's just because time passed. Maybe it's because I told someone. But no matter what the reason is, opening up definitely didn't hurt. That's what I'll say. Because what that did was that kind of led to further discussions down the line. That led to very personal discussions, which are difficult, to say the least. Opening up about things that you felt or thought or even done. Like, I used to think in the past, and I'm sure there are still people that hold this belief, that I'm just the biggest asshole. And it's just because I was depressed all the time and I didn't really know how to handle my emotions. And I always had this thing where I was trying to push people away because if they got closer, then they might know me. And then even though I never wanted to kill myself, I wanted to be that kind of expendable friend. I wanted to be that person that you'd talk to here and there, but not that person that you'd invite over for a party or for dinner with your family. And it's because I didn't want to be close. But opening up, even if it was in a moment of sheer panic, helped me to get to a position where I was more comfortable with becoming closer with people. And since then, I've grown a lot. And like, again, this is all just from my own personal experience, but like, making a podcast about this is, if I told myself like even a year ago that I was going to do this, I would have laughed in my face, because I was not at a point where I was ready to do that. I was not okay with sharing my thoughts. I wasn't even okay with recording my voice and putting it up, because I think I have a pretentious voice. And now I'm putting up podcasts about me crying in my bed for hours. And see it however you want. Maybe I'm no better than I was a few years ago. But because I'm able to talk to people whenever I'm in a bad state, it helps control it. So I'm my girlfriend is a good support system for me, but if she's busy at that moment, that I start having a depressive fit or a mental breakdown or an anxiety attack, the fact that I've opened up enough to share with other people and kind of tell them that I do have these thoughts, it creates an entire support system as opposed to just a support person. Like, if I'm freaking out, I don't have to call my girlfriend Alex. I can call my mom, I can call my dad, I can call my siblings. And that alone is enough to make me feel a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be family. It could be a friend. It could be a colleague, as long as that's something that you're comfortable talking with them about. Because I know not everybody has siblings, or, maybe they don't, maybe their parents aren't around as often, or they don't have the best relationship, and that kind of stuff can happen. So as long as there is a support system, it doesn't matter who it is. But just opening up to get to that point, once you have someone that you feel comfortable sharing those incredibly personal and negative thoughts with, you get past that barrier that you don't want to have up anyway, but you have a hard time controlling, where you feel like you want to be that expendable friend. And now, whenever I have those negative thoughts, or like a suicidal thought or something crosses over my brain, in the past, the thought was, nobody cares about me. I could kill myself right now and no one would know any different. But now I know that if I have those negative thoughts and I have all of these resources because I was comfortable opening up, that I would be putting a hole in a lot of these people's lives. And no matter how you feel, if you kill yourself or you do anything that drastically negative, you are putting a hole in people's lives, whether you know it or not. And it's a shame. And I'm glad that I was able to find out early on, or early enough in my life. And that's kind of the whole point of this, all of my writing and podcast, is because I want to help other people kind of figure it out too. Y'all matter. Your family, your friends, everybody cares about you. Everybody. Even that person that you passed in the hall that one time, like in school, they probably think about you from time to time just as a passing memory. And that should be enough to keep you going, because you're just, I don't know. There doesn't have to be a reason for, people to exist, but we all exist. And that should be enough, even in the darkest of times, even whenever you're at your worst and you're just laying in bed and you're thinking you're going to kill yourself. Just tough it out, because people want you there. I promise. And if you feel like they don't, ask them. Open up to them. Tell them that you're having these negative thoughts. Tell them that you think about killing yourself. Don't beat around the bush. I know it's an easy thing to do. But if you just tell them, they'll tell you how they really feel. They might be able to relate to it. They might say, I have those thoughts too. It's a bitch, isn't it? And then that's a talking point where you can talk more about it and be like, yeah, these are the thoughts that I have going through my head. And if they can't relate, and there's going to be people out there that can't relate, not everybody is depressed, and you can't expect everybody to get it from the same viewpoint and perspective as you. But they'll express something that should be able to help you out. So maybe, you tell a friend and they're not depressed, and they're like, wow, like I've never heard anything like that. Are you okay? And the answer, I mean, I guess it's a maybe, because hopefully it's a yes. But if you're not feeling okay, you need to be open about that with yourself, more importantly yourself, but also with others. Opening up, in my opinion, is the only way to really start to try to feel better. It's the only way, because it's the only way that you're going to be able to attack these thoughts head on. And that matters. You can't just let them sit there and be inside your brain and just keep attacking you, because if they just keep attacking you, they're not going to go away. You're not going to get any better, and eventually you're going to have a bad day where you feel like you can't handle it alone. So find people. Doesn't matter if it's a paid therapist, a friend, or a bus driver. I don't care. I don't care if it's I don't care if you just talk to your dog, and if that comforts you, great. Then do it every day. Then maybe you'll feel better. I hope I didn't ramble for too long. Thanks.